Indianapolis Colts cornerback Jaylon Jones is set to break out in year 2. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you all for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. Hello, everyone. I'm Zach Hicks, your favorite film nerd over at horseshoehuddle.com. Jake is out today, but I hope all of you guys are enjoying your Memorial Day. Really fun time to get together with family. Remember all the people that we have lost in our lives, and respect all the soldiers, obviously, that have sacrificed so much for this country. So I hope you guys are enjoying Memorial Day weekend. We're here today talking Colts still. Don't worry, we're not missing today's holiday whatsoever. We're talking Indianapolis Colts players that can break out in 2024. So to kick it off, we're going to talk with two 2023 rookies who showed a lot of flash in year one, guys that we're really liking going into their second year, and how they're going to take that big step forward this next season in 2024. Then we're going to talk about two starters, or two, high-level role players at least, that are set to really take that big step forward and really earn it in their contract seasons. And then two kind of under the radar dark horses that can emerge in 2024 as big time contributors for the team. So to kick this thing off, talking about two 2023 rookies that really flashed. And it's funny, these are two day 3 guys that really flashed in year one. We're going to kick it off with Will Mallory, the tight end out of Miami last year. Came into last year in the really, really tough positional battle at that tight end position. He was competing with, Drew Ogletree, Jelani Woods, Kylan Granson, Mo Alley Cox, like all of those players there for playing time in training camp. And Mallory's strong play, combined with Woods being out for the season with an injury, led to him getting on the field for, I believe, it was 159 snaps as a rookie. Got out there for 159, did some good things in those snaps. He caught 18 of 20 catchable targets last season, so a 90% catch rate anytime the ball was within his grasp, and did a lot of good things with it. I mean, again, it wasn't like, he didn't put up like 600 yards receiving or anything like that, but if you're looking at this Colts tight end room, Mallory was the biggest surprise and the biggest flash for this team. Ogletree did some good things blocking. Granson did some good things early in the season, but late in the year, Mallory was that guy who really did good things for this offense. So Will Mallory going into year 2, obviously there's still a step that he can take going forward to emerge as more of a player for this team, but you have to be just excited about the flashes that he showed. He was really productive over the middle of the field, did a lot of good things in the Shane Steichen scheme that uses tight ends on option routes and curls and digs and stuff like that. Like, he did a lot of good work over the middle, caught everything thrown his way, got involved in some of the RPO game stuff. So again, you got to be feeling really good about Will Mallory going into year 2. And look, even with Jelani Woods coming back this year, Mallory showed enough last year where he can take that next step. So the big thing for him going into this next year is being more well-rounded as a blocker, being more involved in the blocking and the run blocking game, and then just creating a little bit more after the catch. He only had the one missed tackle forced after the catch last season. He can do a little bit more going forward. But I think, outside of Jelani Woods, if you're betting on a tight end in this tight end room on the Colts offense, I think it's Will Mallory. And honestly, I wouldn't really, be upset with anyone betting on him over Jelani Woods, because we just haven't seen Jelani Woods in a while. I know Jelani Woods is the really fun, exciting, explosive, big-time player, but look, Will Mallory, we saw last year. He did a lot of good things for this team down the stretch, where Woods was not playing for the team last year because of that injury. So honestly, look, if you're betting on anyone in this group, I mean, look, Will Mallory is not a tough one to bet on whatsoever. So I think outside of the next guy we're about to mention, if we're talking day 3 players from that 2023 class, Mallory's got a lot to earn this year and a lot to, win over this year. And he can do a lot of good things if he gets on the field. Jaylon Jones, though, is the other one where, when we're looking at this Colts cornerback room, obviously we are all still saying like, hey, get another veteran in here, get more of a solid player in here. But if they do continue to run with what they have, Jaylon Jones is likely to be a starter yet again this next season. It's him versus Dallas Flowers to be a starter. going into this 2024 season. And Jaylon Jones, to me, is really intriguing because he's a very young player, only 22 years old this season. He's played a lot of football in his career. He's been playing, he was a starter in college essentially since the time he stepped on the field there at Texas A&M. Then he comes to this Colts team as a 7th-round pick and plays a ton of football, a ton of defensive snaps last year, had a couple pass breakups. He had one interception, but it was called back for an interference call on him. So, not really the ball production there, but you could see the flashes. You could see the good things on film from him. You could see a young player learning from his mistakes as the season was going along. It wasn't perfect. It was not perfect whatsoever. But I think when you look at what this scheme asks of its players and what he can do within this scheme, him being a guy who can get into his cover 3 drops, get into his vertical drops and attack downhill and knock the ball away from wide receivers, I think he can be very effective in that role. The key for him is just getting more confident, seeing the field a little bit more, and taking that next step. And I think if you're going to bet on anyone from that 2023 class, again, aside from Anthony Richardson and Josh Downs and Juju Brents, those are the high end guys that you invested high picks in. If you're betting on those guys though on day 3, like Jaylon Jones has the best path to success. He's going to see the field a lot more than these other guys. He's has the most experience under his belt, and he's a guy who's been doing this for years. From his time in college to his time right now with the Colts. Like, he's just been on the field a ton, and you're hoping to see that experience just really pay off for him. So Jaylon Jones, if he can just gain that confidence, he can be a little bit more crisp in his technique. I think he can be a legit number 2 outside corner for this Colts team, alongside Juju Brents and hopefully Dallas Flowers getting back to being Dallas Flowers. So, we sit here all off season. Don't get me wrong, I'm certainly at fault for this as well. And we sit here and we complain about the lack of addition at corner and just being scared of running it back with the young kids. But there can be positive progression from this young cornerback room. You can't really rule that out, especially what we saw in the flashes from some of these kids. I mean, Juju Brents had some really good flashes last year. Jaylon Jones, though, again, a 7th-round pick coming in and playing as many snaps as he did and it not being a complete disaster, I think is a positive showing for him. So I think Jaylon Jones is set to take a good, solid step forward for this team. I wouldn't be shocked at all if he emerges as a really solid starting corner for this Colts team next year. And I do think that he has that potential to be that guy on the outside. So Jaylon Jones, cornerback, and Will Mallory, tight end. I keep an eye on both these guys. I think both of them just have a little bit more in the tank, and I think they can both emerge as productive like more than just productive players. They can be guys who you're counting on for the future of this team going forward. I really think both these guys have it in the tank, which would be great there for day 3 picks that the Colts acquired in 2023. So again, Will Mallory, Jaylon Jones, keep an eye on both these guys as breakout candidates. But coming up, we're going to talk about 2 guys in contract seasons that are set to have their best seasons to date in 2024. But first, it's winner take all time in the NBA, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Celtics and Pacers tonight, game 4. The Pacers might be going home after a 4-game stretch. They're down 3-0 to the Celtics right now. Celtics are favored by 8 points tonight. So if you are a Pacers fan that is all about that upset, make sure you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and make that playoff shot count and win some big money on your Pacers, obviously going forward and the rest of the series. We're not out of it yet, guys. We're not out of it yet. So FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? You have to turn down the volume with all that shouting. Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 streaming channel, sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or free on the Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, guys, we're talking about 2 players now heading into contract seasons here in 2024 who are set to have their best seasons to date. Now, this is a tough category to pick because the Colts have done a really good job of locking up a lot of players that were going to be free agents going into this next season. I mean, they locked up DeForest Buckner, who was set to be a free agent. Michael Pittman Jr., if he would have played on the tag, would have been a free agent. So they got those deals locked up. I think Zaire Franklin was coming up too. They got him knocked in there. So they got those guys locked in for the long term. But these two players are younger players set to be free agents in 2025 that I think are bound to have really strong seasons for the Colts. And we know how players are. When it gets to that contract season, that's when the lights shine the brightest and these players really step up because it's time to get that bag. And I think Will Fries is a great player for this category. Will Fries, a former 7th-round pick. Again, the theme of today's show is those 7th-round picks, those later round picks. Will Fries, though, former 7th-round pick who emerged as a starter over the last 1.5 seasons for this Colts team. It started off pretty rough about a season and a half ago when Matt Ryan was the quarterback. Fries had his struggles for sure, wasn't perfect by any means, but we saw him get better as the season went along. Then you go into this past season, him and Bernhard Raimann were the two question marks starting going into last year. Raimann obviously emerged as a really, really good young left tackle for this Colts team. And then Fries did some really good things at right guard. I think his play was a little bit more volatile than Raimann, where Raimann was just consistently steady all season long, where Fries, it was some really, really high peaks and some pretty low lows. I think in the run game, he could certainly stand to be a little bit better, but in the pass protection game, he was pretty solid. Fries did a lot of good things at right guard, especially when teams were lining up better pass rushers on him because Quentin Nelson's his running mate on the other side at left guard. So teams are really trying to isolate on Will Fries and throw things at him. And I think Fries did some good things last year, man. He did some really good things. There were some really just high-level flashes. He had to deal with Blake Freeland starting at right tackle next to him for most of the season, which can be up and down, to say the least there. So, Fries, I think, is just setting up to have a bigger season this next year. He's shown this ability in his entire career where every single year he's gotten better. Every single time that he's had a chance to start, the next start's better. Every single week, he's the better player than he was the week before. So if he goes into this offseason, he looks at it and he's like, okay, in the run game, I got to add a little more leg drive, a little more physicality, maybe get a little bit lower. In the pass game, I just got to be a little bit better with my stunt pickups and get my hands out quicker. If he sees those things on film and really devotes himself to getting better at those, which we've seen him do in his career with the Colts thus far, there's no reason to think that he can't be a top 15 right guard in football this next year, a top 12 right guard in football next year. I mean, he's shown that progress. Again, he went from a 7th-round pick who was not, a lock to make the roster by any means, climbed up his way to getting a chance in 2022 to now being the de facto starter that no one's really questioning on this right guard spot. And look, I fully acknowledge that if he has a great season this year, he's probably playing himself out of Indy with a bigger contract, but I think that's well worth it for the Colts, obviously. If you get one great season out of him and then he goes to play for someone else, like, cool, you got this 7th-round pick to being a really productive player for you. And then he's going out and getting paid, and you have Matt Gonsalves who can step in 2025. But yeah, I think Will Fries is really set up to have a big season this year. I think he's going to do some really good things for the Colts. And I think their offensive line this year is going to be arguably their best offensive line play that we've seen in the Chris Ballard era. Like maybe you can say 2018 with Andrew Luck because you had Costanzo at left tackle and Glowinski was having a really good season. But I think this season's going to be a really great season from the Colts offensive line. I think, getting all these guys back and healthy, getting Fries taking another step forward, getting Raimann taking another step forward. I think this offensive line is going to be clicking on all cylinders. And I think Fries having his best career season to date is going to be a big part of that. So Will Fries, I think, I mean, this is a pure projection from me, a pure just guess on what he's going to do this next year. I think he's going to come out, have his best career season, be a top 12-ish right guard, and then get a pretty big payday in free agency next year. So Will Fries, keep an eye on him, obviously, this next year, going into a contract season. And then the other guy we got to talk about here is Dayo Odeyingbo. Dayo Odeyingbo, the forgotten man on the Colts defensive line. Really the only guy to not get that extension right now because Kwity Paye got his 5th-year option picked up. Ebu Kam is signed until through the 2025 season. Laiatu Latu is obviously locked in for his rookie contract. So when you're looking at this Colts defensive line, the only guy that's not here past 2025 is Dayo Odeyingbo. So Dayo Odeyingbo has a real chance to, hit the market in 2025 and see what's out there and potentially get a deal from another team. or if he has a great season, the Colts can move some things around and try to find a way to keep him. But Dio Dangbo, man, had a great season a year ago. He was more of a rotational pass rusher like he's been his entire NFL career to this point. Had 12 sacks according to Pro Football Focus. Had some really, really high-level flashes against, again, albeit offensive lines that are not perfect with the Patriots offensive line and the Panthers offensive line, but I believe he had like 5.5 sacks in those two games combined. Did some really, really great things in those matchups. And then you just saw the flashes throughout the whole season. I mean, he was going from 3-tech to 1-tech to, playing in the wide 9 at times, and was just destroying blockers with his length and his power and doing some great things as a pass rusher. So now he's going into year 4 for him, just bigger, stronger, still working on the athleticism, healthier, doing some really good things for this team. And with that contract season, I think, we could see him hit, again, 12 to 15 sacks again this year. I don't think that's outside the realm of possibilities. I mean, the Colts NASCAR package on third downs is going to be him, Latu, Ebukam, and Buckner. Maybe Kwity Paye, sneaks in there for a couple times too, but they have their guys ready for that NASCAR package. He's going to be out there rushing the passer quite a bit. And if he can just replicate what he did last year, I mean, he's going to get a big payday in free agency as well. So Dio Dangbo, I think things are lining up for a really big season for him, especially when you add in the speed rusher that is Laiatu Latu on the other side. You're going to have quarterbacks sliding up in the pocket a little bit more, which will lead to more production from that 3-tech or that 1-tech position that Dio Dangbo is rushing from on those NASCAR package situations. So yeah, Dangbo, it really is. It's just the consistency with him. You see some games where he goes quiet. You see some games where he's not always beating his guy in front of him, even though he has the ability to do so. So if he can really just hone in on that consistency and turn those flashes into more impact plays, I mean, you can be looking at one of the better rushing 3-techs in football, alongside DeForest Buckner, alongside Laiatu Latu, alongside Samson Ebukam and Kwity Paye. Like, this Colts pass rush could be really, really good this next season. And Dio Dangbo is a big part of that. Dio Dangbo was a big part of it last year. He's going to be a big part of it going forward. So I think if you're really circling, who are the guys who have it all, the stars aligning for the big breakout season coming up, is these two players going into their contract season, Will Fries and Dio Dangbo. Those are the two players to me where it feels like the stars are aligning for them to really take that step forward and emerge as guys who are, go from fringe starters, like good, solid starters, to, okay, these are legit players. Will Fries, a good right guard, and Dio Dangbo, a really dangerous pass rusher. I think both these players have it in the cards going into this next season to emerge as those type of players for the Indianapolis Colts. But coming up, we're going to go a little bit more dark horse here. We're going to go to the bottom of the roster. We're going to talk about two players who happen to actually be from that 2023 draft class as well. But we're going to talk about two players who could really shine in camp and maybe make a name for themselves here in 2024. But first, Game Time makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. And now, look, guys, I know Pacers fans, we might not be getting that NBA Finals this year, down 3-0 to the Celtics. It's not looking great, but you can still get tickets to the NBA Finals whether or not the Pacers are involved. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets and tickets to your favorite events. Look, a couple of my favorite things with Game Time. I've used Game Time multiple times. I love it so much. It's great for anything that I use it for. But here are my favorite features when it comes to Game Time. You get last-minute deals. You can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, anything near you. You get Game Time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. You get all-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total upfront, no surprise fees like shipping and handling or all those things that you see from anything that you purchase online. All-in pricing is super clutch. And then my favorite thing right here, the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. You guys can take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, Colts fans, we are back talking two more players set to break out in 2024. And these are more bottom of the roster type players, players who really have to show out in training camp to earn a role on the Colts this next season. But two players I'm really counting on when it comes to training camp. Two players who I think, when they're out there with the third team, the second team, whatever it's going to be in camp, I think these guys are going to really show out and do some really great things and earn roles on this team. There's going to be that situation where you're looking at them and saying, we can't keep these guys off the field. They're doing good enough things in practice and in camp where we have to find a way to get these guys out there. My first one I have on here is Adetomi Adebawore, the really, really intriguing fourth-round pick from a year ago. He ran a 4.49 at the NFL Combine at 282 pounds, and he just seems to me like the perfect archetype of a young player who takes that big step from year 1 to year 2. Or maybe it's, year 2 to year 3, and we're looking at this next year. But I really think year 1 to year 2 with him is going to be big. Last year the Colts basically had him as a healthy scratch for majority of the season. Majority of his snaps came in a 4-game stretch around the bye week time, where he totaled 2 sacks in that stretch, a couple tackles, did a couple good things for this team. But for the most part, it was that reserve role, that healthy scratch role, just to get him experience with that 3-tech position and using him in practice and essentially not losing him to other teams. Adetomi, I think, did some really good things when he got on the field. He showed that explosion, that speed, that just tenacity that he brings to the pass rushing ability. Just a really, really good player. But I think he needs to take that next step in terms of developing his craft, developing his technique, finding a go-to pass rushing move, just getting his body exactly where he wants it to be. 6'1", 282. Does he want to get a little bit bigger to play defensive tackle full-time? Does he go a little bit slimmer, just be a little bit faster and quicker? Where does he fall in terms of the body size and the makeup with his ability? And I think that's what going into year 2 really is about for him. So if he put the work in this offseason, if he got with pass rushing trainers, if he got with nutritionists and really slimmed out his body and did all the things that you want him to do, I think that year 2 could be a great opportunity for him. I mean, if he comes in here at the weight that he wants to be in, fresh, working on his craft all offseason, it's going to be hard to keep this type of player off the field. I mean, we're looking again, 6'1", 282, 4.49 in that 40, 90th percentiles in the jumps as well at the combine coming out. Showcase that tenacity and that explosion on film as a rookie. There's a lot to like in what he can do on the football field. It really comes down to just how he looks in training camp. But I think he, again, everything's just right there for him where it's like, if you can get out there against this third team, fourth team, whatever it's going to be in training camp and truly dominate like you should be, they're going to have to get you some playing time out there. And, I know they have Tyquan Lewis, Dio Dangbo, and all these players in front of him, but there's still a path to get him a couple snaps a game and really showcasing what he can be. So Adetomi, it just fits that archetype of raw athletic project who is getting better with time and taking those steps with better foundations and better technique going forward. Very Bernhard Raimann, where Raimann was a similar type of way. 3rd-round pick in 2022, looked the part, but just wasn't fully, filled out, wasn't fully what you wanted to be. And then once he got to that point that he wanted to be with his technique and with his size, he was ready to go at left tackle. Adetomi obviously plays a very different position there at defensive tackle, but it's a similar type of thing where once he gets to the right size he wants to get to, once he gets to the right technique, this guy is ready to go. So I think Adetomi is a really intriguing player to watch. Still a 4th-round pick from 2023. No rush whatsoever to get him out there, but if they can get him out there this year, really, really fun time. I think we could see some really cool pass rushing packages with a player with his skill set. Another player I wanted to keep an eye on was a player who tore his ACL last year. Again, 2023 rookie. I know the Colts drafted a lot of guys in that class, and a lot of guys got injured, but Daniel Scott out of California last year, the safety prospect, I was really excited about him going into camp last year. He was a guy where, on film in college, you could see the explosion and the speed and the recovery ability and just everything you wanted to see from a safety prospect. But unfortunately, that ACL injury set him back a little bit. So he's coming into camp this year, 25-year-old rookie, essentially. And he really has to work his way into the trust of the coaching staff and into, the right spots to get playing time this year. But I think when you look at this safety depth, you look at Nick Ross has really not lived up to his draft status as of right now. Rodney Thomas has kind of fallen out of favor with this coaching staff. Julian Blackmon's going to be the starter at strong safety, but free safety is wide open right now. A player like Scott, with his ability, with his just skill set, his talent, with his versatility, he's a guy who could really take over that free safety spot and maybe not earn a starting job, but really earn some snaps this next season. He's a guy where, if you asked me going into camp last year who my favorite day 3 pick was to earn some snaps, I really would have said Daniel Scott. And it looks like he's already getting some good time with the Colts. I mean, I saw a bunch of tweets the other day about minicamp where he had an interception of Anthony Richardson on a ball thrown over the middle of the field from Wiley Cox. So he's already kind of showing that impact, the smarts, the savvy. I mean, this is a 25-year-old player who played a lot of college football on special teams and on defense. So he can do a lot of things for your team. It's just about getting him on the field and hopefully staying healthy. So Daniel Scott, I think, is going to be that guy where, a couple days into training camp, we're going to be looking. It's like, why is this number, 31 or 37, whatever number he is, like, why is this guy running so much with the first team? It's because, oh yeah, Daniel Scott's a good player. He's a good player who can do some good things for this defense. So Daniel Scott, Adetomi Adebawore, I think those are two players where, we're not really talking about them right now, but I think by the end of training camp, we're going to be looking at these two guys like, hey, they're having really good camps. Like, hopefully we can see them on the field this next year. And I don't know if that's going to be fully in the cards, but I think both these guys certainly can play themselves into roles in 2024 and beyond for this Colts team. But that's all I have for you guys today. Before I get out of here, though, I do want to remind you that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. And again, I do want to wish you guys a happy Memorial Day as well. I hope you're enjoying it with your loved ones and your families. And if you guys don't already, make sure you're following at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at Zach Hicks 2, all on Twitter. Also, subscribe to us on YouTube, wherever you list your podcasts. We love your guys' ratings and reviews, and we'll catch you guys back here tomorrow afternoon.